Hey, you're listening to episode 20 of the TA Pedals podcast. I'm Tristan.
And I'm Stephon.
"20 episodes.
Yeah, the big 2-0.
Kind of wild, honestly.
Yeah, when I look back, it doesn't feel like it. But when you say the word 20, it's like, wow.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of become just like a thing that we do every week. And we've kind of gotten in the routine of doing it, just sitting down and talking for an hour, each week. And we don't really take it like so seriously, like it's just something fun to do. And
It's really, I look at it as a way for, it's just that one day a week where we can get together and we do the podcast, but we also, do some brainstorming and you just hang out as friends. And I think that's, I feel like we both kind of need that. So
yeah, I completely agree. I definitely
the
need that.
podcast is kind of just a bonus.
Yeah, it's like it's a medium to make that happen.
Yeah.
We've recently, started playing Magic together quite a bit, and we do that almost every week before the podcast now. And I feel like with that plus the podcast, it really stimulates my brain or whatever. And I feel like doing the podcast and just having nothing to focus on except for our conversation really helps me develop my conversational skills. And it makes me think before I speak and try to communicate really effectively. And yeah, so it's nice to be able to just jump on here and talk for a little while.
I agree.
So episode 20, we, we're kind of talking about what we're going to talk about today before we jumped on. And you said, hey, let's talk about the whole alien thing. We've been kind of putting that off because it's such a long conversation.
We have mentioned that we will have an episode of aliens, and why not now?
Yeah, you're right. Let's talk about aliens.
It's been a long time coming. I feel like.
Yeah, for sure.
So you go ahead and you had an interesting topic, and I think we should start with that one.
Okay, so I don't necessarily believe that interstellar or extraterrestrial quote unquote aliens exist, but I do think that there are unexplained phenomena. And because of my religious background, I have a theory on how I think things work, but and what those unexplained things are. I don't have any proof. It's just thinking about how different concepts and certain data tie in together. And, it's, I wouldn't say that this is something that I even believe necessarily. So I need to start off with that. It's just something that for me would explain how everything kind of ties in together. And for anyone who is interested in what I'm going to talk about, there's a really good series of they're not really sermons, but they are by this preacher named Chuck Missler. He has a seminar of I think it's 3 1-hour sessions where he kind of explains a lot of what I'm going to be talking about, and he does a way better job of it than I do. So for anyone who's seriously going to consider what I'm going to say, it's a good idea to take what I say with a grain of salt, of course, as it's just a theory and it is rooted in some of my religious beliefs. But go and watch the series by Chuck Missler called The Return of the Nephilim. And it's a good preface to what I think could be happening and how everything works. I don't really know exactly where to start. So I guess
Nephilim is like the old school term for angels, right?
Giants.
Okay.
Yeah, in the Bible it talks about Nephilim, and it's giants. And so, I guess I'll just start, and if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt and ask what the questions, and I'll try to explain it to the best of my knowledge and my thinking capacity. So I guess, oh man, where do I start? It's difficult to choose a place. Okay, so I guess I'll start with this. The explanation of like multi-dimensional or extra-dimensional travel or existence. So the way that Chuck Missler kind of explains extra-dimensional travel and overlapping is like if you think about a piece of paper being a two-dimensional plane, and say there's a stick figure who is in that two-dimensional plane, and say that you, as an outside observer, were to take your finger and stick it through the third dimension into the second dimension where that stick figure man could see your finger, but he wouldn't be able to perceive the depth of your finger. So what he would see if he was looking at your finger straight on, like say that the tip of your finger was coming towards his face, he would see a dot start to appear as your finger passed through his dimension. And the closer it got to him, it would look like it would go from a dot to a circle, a bigger circle as it got closer to him. And it would, as you retracted your finger, it would shrink back to a dot until it disappeared into that point in his two-dimensional space. And so we can expand on that idea by thinking about what it would look like if, say, a four-dimensional, a hypercube, a tesseract, passed through our dimension. And so if you took the space that you're sitting in now, your three-dimensional space, and some four-dimensional, fifth-dimensional creature threw a tesseract into the third dimension, and then it bounced back out, what would that look like? So it would look like a cube, because each face of a tesseract is a cube. So it would, as the tesseract bounced in and out of the third dimension that you are observing, the space you're observing, it would look as if a cube grew from an infinitely small spot, and it grew into a cube. And then as it bounced back out of the dimension, it would shrink back down into nothing. And so with that idea, we see in video and by witness observation and things, people describing all these like aerial phenomena and things that they can't explain, these shapes in the sky, these forms that break the laws of physics by performing right-angled turns at unbelievably high speeds, and even things such as ghosts. And for me, it makes sense that those things are not fake, but rather that they are being observed incompletely. And so even things like ghosts, like people say they see spirits and stuff, but I tend to think that maybe they're only seeing a limited scope of whatever being that is in the third dimension, because it's probably an extra dimensional creature or entity or whatever. I think we're misinterpreting these sightings as things that are crossing from, like, either from other dimensions into our observable third dimension, or possibly that it's some sort of overlap, because all of these dimensions exist on top of each other, like layered on top of each other. And I think that they're, in the higher dimensions, like things exist, like supergravity and like even like nuclear and quantum forces go into those higher dimensions. And I think that those higher dimensions, even though we can't specifically observe what's going on in them, I think that they are integral to keeping the laws of physics that we experience, I guess, held together in a certain sense. So there's that part of it. I think that we're seeing things from other dimensions that we don't fully comprehend because we can only observe 3-dimensional space. Do you have any questions so far?
I don't really have a question. Like, I have some questions, but it's not really like to question what you're saying. But, so like, would it be safe to say that as you go up in dimension, you gain more rules for, let's say, physics or any type of dynamic? Like, let's say you have, so like in a 2D world, you are defined by 2 axes. In a 3D world, you're defined by 3 axes.
Right.
But like, so like the physics in a 2D world would be the same, but we have more rules to those physics.
It's less complex.
Exactly.
Yes.
So like as you go up in the dimensions, you gain more rules to how things work.
Yes, and also I think more possibilities of ways to bend physics.
Yeah.
Or I don't know. Yeah.
I just want to make one statement.
Yeah.
While I do understand that and I see some probability to it, I don't necessarily agree with it.
Okay.
Because like I do believe that there is a possibility of a 4th dimension.
There definitely is. It's time.
Well, I mean, yeah, but I believe that there is a 4th dimension and maybe even more than that. But I don't believe that those like sightings and like people seeing alien ships and ghosts and all that stuff, I don't think that falls under that umbrella.
Gotcha.
I personally don't believe that.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the movie Interstellar?
Yes.
Okay, so like at the end when he is able to see back to the bookcase.
Yeah, he basically gets stuck in a corridor of timeline.
Exactly. It's what it is he crosses the event horizon of a black hole and he enters the 4th dimension. And in the 4th dimension, if you were able to cross over into the 4th dimension, imagine how you said that right now we exist on 3 axes. Well, the 4th dimension would add a 4th axis, and that is time. And you could literally walk through time as you walk through 3-dimensional space now. And that's pretty much what happens in that movie. That's what he's able to literally move through time and see different points in time and all of them at once by existing in that dimension.
Yeah.
And so, when people always say like, "Oh, I saw this ghost and it was this guy and he looked like he was from the Civil War." I'm like, well, that could be that. Maybe not though. And I don't necessarily believe that. I'm just saying.
Like the majority of like ghost research and stuff like that suggests that when you have a ghost that's tied to a certain place, that they're stuck in a sort of loop where they replay a certain event over and over and over again.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
And so like that to me doesn't match up with the interdimensional thing.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things where like it does explain some things, but at the same time it doesn't explain other things.
Gotcha.
So like that's where I'm at on that.
Gotcha. And so I guess like on to the next part. I do believe that like there's a God that exists,
Yeah.
and I believe that um I also believe that the Big Bang did happen. And, for a long time, it seems like science and religion have fought. And I don't think that that's necessary, most of the time. Um, I, I pretty much think that, to put it in simple terms, I think that before the Big Bang, nothing existed really, which is weird to think about. But at the same time, everything existed, just compressed into this point in space. And then, even time didn't exist. And then an explosion happened and everything came into being as we know it today. And I just believe that there had to be something that existed before the Big Bang and beyond the limits, essentially, that we are bound by today, which means it's like timeless, spaceless, formless, whatever. And that's what I call God. When people want to mock Christianity or whatever, they say, "Oh, it's an old white man with a beard, genie guy sitting up in the sky throwing thunderbolts." Well, like
That's Zeus, not
yeah,
not
yeah,
the typical, Christian god. That's
I've heard him
mythology.
mocked that way.
That's mythology god named Zeus.
Yeah, I've heard him called
And-
Magic Sky Daddy.
And equivalently Thor.
Yeah. But that's how I've always heard God mocked, as Magic Sky Daddy, and they picture him as like a guy with like a white beard, and he's whatever.
I mean,
and like I don't, I get it, and it's fine. Like wouldn't stop people from mocking religion. I think that it's important for things to be scrutinized, but in my view, there's obviously like no way, if God exists, or if you believe God exists, there's no way to know what he looks like. But I don't believe he has a form anyway. I just think it's
not a form recognizable to us anyway.
Yeah, because the Bible even gives a description, but it's not like it's weird. The way that he's described is through these visions that these people had of God, of seeing God, and it was, they described it in ways that they could relate to.
Yeah.
So like, they said he had like all these characteristics, like his feet were made of bronze, and like whatever. And I don't think that that's an accurate description. I just think that it's the only thing they knew.
Maybe he was some sort of type of humanoid that was illuminated.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm trying to say, is like maybe he had like some sort of form and they only saw like you get what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I guess I don't need to elaborate anymore,
I do understand.
But that's I just believe that God is what existed before the Big Bang that made everything happen the way that it did. But I think the Big Bang, like, you can trace that back as evidence of the origin of everything. And I believe that God has to be beyond time and space and, all of these limitations to have triggered that happening.
Yeah.
So there's that point.
So like you seen the Lego movie, right?
No.
Okay. Well, the Lego movie kind of touched bases on that kind of situation.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So like, they have their own world, right? And they live within this sort of world. The Lego people do, and at some point in time, they escape the world and they go through this sort of fog. And when they leave the fog, they come off the Lego table where humans have been building this world for them to live in. And when they escape, they no longer have the I guess, like, they still have the ability to communicate with each other, but they don't have the ability to move around and freely and all that stuff. because they never were moving around freely in the first place.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy.
Yeah. So like if you think about it, like there's someone outside of our universe who created our universe and is also manipulating us.
That I've had a very long discussion with so many people about that, and I don't think we're being manipulated because, and there's a very fine line between like determinism and free will and that whole thing, because and really at the end of the day it comes down to, like, even though God, I believe is all powerful and all knowing, I don't think he's pulling the strings. I think we do make our own choices, and even though he has the foresight of the future, he's not the one moving the pawns. And it all comes down to, like, it's almost like when you think of the way the Bible describes the judgment day and you stand before God and you answer for everything you've ever done. It's like the only purpose of free will is that so God's righteousness is justified. Because if he was the one pulling the strings, you could blame him. If he's not the one pulling the strings, even if you say, well, you knew this was going to happen, he'll say, but you chose it. And so, like, in that whole, which we're kind of going off the rails a little bit, but in that scenario, it's almost like life itself isn't predetermined, but it's meaningless when it comes to eternity. It's just a way to justify the fact that you made the choice of whatever you did in your entire life. So free will it's almost an illusion, but not quite. And it's a very fine line when you start looking into how free will in the Bible and all of those concepts relate to each other. I've been through that whole thing, and I was like fixated on it for literally like 3 months, and I was calling preachers and pastors and like all these people who I trust to rationalize it with me and not try to just tell me what I want to hear. People who have been educating themselves about not only the Christian faith, but about things like we're talking about for a long time, and people who I know that if they were presented with contrary evidence, they wouldn't try to lie to me. So I've kind of been down that path too, and I was like questioning it, like, well, then, like, why does anything even matter? Why do my choices matter? Why does anything matter if God already knows? And like, why would he put everyone through this? And like, like whatever. And it's kind of like to I guess establish what I believe as far as that goes. It's like since the Big Bang and everything, it's almost like God has not intervened much, because if he does, then it is manipulation. If he were to correct the choices of humankind to prevent disaster. And that's why, people say, well, if God exists and he loves us, why are there starving kids in Africa? And it's like, well, he didn't make them starve. And yeah, like he could fix it, but then like that goes into like tampering with certain anyway, that again, that's kind of going off the rails, but that's a whole different conversation.
Okay, so
anyway,
we've heard the religious side of aliens. Now let's hear the non-religious.
Well, no, we have not heard the religious side of aliens. I haven't really gotten started. I mean, it goes a little deeper to establish
the religion-based theories of how aliens can exist, which is basically what you've been talking about.
Well, that's what I've been talking about, but I haven't gotten to the good stuff, I guess.
Yeah. So,
I guess if you want me to wrap up the religious side, I can. So,
I think we should consider, other sides of it. Like,
well, but it's like there's a premise, and I have to establish everything so that we can relate things.
Yeah.
And, whatever. And I think that there are a couple things that I can shorten down so that we can get on with it, I guess. This is why we put it off for so long.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, whatever.
Okay, so I guess to wrap it up, okay, well, I'll just touch on some key biblical points that kind of lead me to think that what I am talking about could be right. I don't know if it is or not. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, none of this changes anything really. So, when it talks about Noah, we'll talk about Noah real quick, and it says that he was perfect in his generations. What that's referring to is in Genesis when it talks about, after Satan's cast out of heaven by God for rebelling and trying to be like God, it says he took a third of all the angels with him. And then it talks about how the sons of man looked upon the daughters of Adam and saw that they were fair and essentially wanted them to bear children. Well, when it says the sons of God, anytime it says the sons of God, it's talking about a direct creation of God. And so it's specifically saying that those angels were directly created by God. They weren't some sort of offspring or whatever. But when it says the daughters of man, it is talking about descendants of Adam. Adam, it also refers to as the son of God because he was the first man that was created in the biblical story. And so it is saying that these angels wanted to mate with human women to produce offspring. But if the question I had was like, well, if the angels were spiritual beings, then how is that possible? Like, that doesn't make any sense, And so then you go, I think, into the book of Ruth, where it talks about, essentially it says there's a special place in hell for those angels who tried to commit those atrocities. And it says that they abandoned, in the Greek, it says the word okaterion, which, when you translate that, it is supposed to mean like the pure dwelling place of the spirit, where the spirit wants to reside. And essentially, like, that's like the perfect uncorrupted body that Christians believe you will attain after, your physical death on earth. And so essentially it's saying that these fallen angels left their spiritual body and inhabited a physical form, which enabled them to mate with these human women. And it says after they did that, those women bore them children, and they referred to those as the Nephilim, which it says they were mighty men of renown, and they were apparently they were giants. They were big
Germans.
people. They were Germans. That's you, buddy. But yeah, it's essentially saying that this unnatural offspring created these exceptional beings who were tall and fast, and even I think it was Buffalo Bill Cody wrote about them in his biography, saying that they saw giants that could run alongside buffalo, and I guess I need to shorten this, so I'm going to cut that part out. But look into that; it's pretty crazy. And so then you would ask yourself, the next logical question is well, why would that happen? And so apparently, you can draw the conclusion that based on the fact that the flood happened and Noah and his family were the only ones that were left, and it says that Noah was perfect in his generations. What that means is his lineage was the only one not corrupted by that unnatural pairing of, those entities with the human women. And the point of that would have been to corrupt the lineage of Jesus Christ so that he wouldn't be able to be a perfect sacrifice. He would be tainted. And so, I guess that was the idea behind it, and that's why the flood had to happen. It wiped out all of the unclean lineage so that Jesus could be born and be a sacrifice or whatever. And so that's I guess, long story short, that's me wrapping up the religious side of it. And so it's like what I'm saying is like, it's like these entities either were able to, or whatever, they could cross dimensions, and maybe they can't anymore, or I don't know. It's all kind of complicated, and if I'm wrapping it up, I can't explain a whole lot more. So, that's the religious side of it. That's why I think that God can exist. That's why I think that we see things that we can't fully comprehend. Because I think it's extra dimensional entities, and not ghosts and not aliens, but more likely like angels and demons and things like that. Biblical things. That's my religious side of it.
I see.
And it only took me 31 minutes to explain all of that.
Well, let's lighten the mood with some jokes.
It's joke time.
It's joke time.
They told me I wouldn't be good at poetry because I'm dyslexic. But so far, I've made 3 jugs and a vase, and they are lovely. Because if you mix up the letters of poetry, it's pottery. And I'm dyslexic.
I think there's 2 T's in pottery, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah. To dyslexic, that doesn't matter.
Right. I got some on-theme jokes.
Okay.
It's joke time.
It's joke time. Why were there only 18 letters in the alphabet?
I don't know.
Because E.T. flew off in a UFO and the CIA chased after him.
That's a good one.
Okay, got another one.
It's joke time.
It's joke time. What did the aliens say to the measuring cup?
I don't know.
Take me to your leader.
Well, that was good. I like that a lot.
Yeah. That's all right. So, let's talk about alien movies.
Okay.
Do you remember seeing a movie called Mars Attacks?
I've seen clips from that movie, but I've never seen the whole thing.
I think I don't know. I don't know why I brought that up. It's a weird movie. But I think Star Trek has a pretty good way of explaining things. I don't know how much Star Trek you've seen.
My dad used to watch it when I was younger, and I was around it, but I never got into it. And I know enough about it to know what it's about and stuff, but I wouldn't say like I'm deep into it or anything.
Well, I remember one episode, I think it's from Next Generation, where they come across this sort of anomaly in space, and it's like it appears to be like this white line that runs through space, and they try to go through it, and they realize that they've entered into a sort of pocket where it's just one dimension. And so while they're in it, all they can see is like just lines running by them. And they realize after being in there for a couple hours that the pressure from the one dimension on their 3-dimensional ship is causing the ship to implode, and so they have to find a way to get out of it. And it's a pretty crazy episode, and it has a lot of it kind of ties into that perspective of with the 2 dimensions and the 3 dimensions and all that stuff.
Right, yeah.
And I think that's pretty it's kind of mind-blowing to think about stuff like that.
Yeah, it is.
So yeah, I don't know. I like to think I just like to think of it as, when it comes to like dimension stuff, I'm more on the side of multiple universes than multi-dimensions. While I can see the possibility of existing within a fourth dimension, like like a one dimension is within a two dimension, and two dimensions within a three dimension, and the three dimensions within the fourth dimension. So the fourth dimension would be the outer lines of so like if you could say the fourth dimension is a universe that holds multi-universes. Like, that's how I look at it.
So, yeah, that's what I was going to ask is, like, why not both? Because the extra dimensional thing is, like, scientifically proven.
Yeah.
Like, because, like, we obviously experience time, but we don't have free movement through it. And I think they have recognized 9 or 10 more dimensions, like total dimensions that they actually say these do exist, but it's not. But like I said, like it's not like it's not exactly like you would go to another world.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like you're in the same universe as you cross these dimensions, and like you said, there are more laws of physics and things like supergravity.
Mm-hmm.
I'm positive that's one that they've said exists or whatever. But yeah, you just answered my question. I was going to say, like, why not? Like, why can't those things exist, and those laws of nature as you progress into higher dimensions exist along with the idea of like, what is it, string theory that says like every choice you make branches off into another dimension?
I mean, that's a part of string theory.
Whenever I started looking into string theory, it got too complicated, and I was like, I don't think I understand without the mathematical background.
It's so like the string theory suggests that whenever a certain event happens, there's two different outcomes, or there could be more than, there could be several different outcomes, and based on the outcome, it, that creates a new timeline or whatever, or it could be a new, like, I like to think of it as like whenever there's an event change, like you can go this way or go that way, and depending on which way it goes, it separates into two different universes, I would say. So like you have ours is on this one, but if we were to decide not to do a podcast today, that would separate into an alternate universe where there is still the universe where we did do the podcast, which we're already in, but there's also one where we didn't do the 20th episode.
Gotcha.
And like that can go along with so many different things.
So do you believe that the universes are created like instantaneously as the choices are made, or do you believe because of the infinite well, maybe not infinite, but because of the dimension of time, do you think that those universes have always existed and we're just experiencing them? Like, I guess, how do you reckon with...
I would say the latter thing that you said, that's what I would go with. So like maybe the other universe has all these little changes, whereas ours has the ones that we're currently living.
Yeah.
And then, and then there's other different changes in a different universe, and so on and so forth. I wouldn't go as far as saying every time there's an event that happens where there's alternate alternatives or whatever, that a new universe is created. I would be more inclined to say that the universe is already existing, but when you get to that point, it's different.
So can you explain to me how you reckon that we are experiencing the specific universe that we're experiencing right now at this moment? Are there other like versions of us that are experiencing those other universes where we made different choices and things?
I would think so, yeah.
Okay. And
So like there's another universe similar to ours, except I never started working at the place that we work at, and we never met, but our lives still continue the way that it does.
So do you think all these universes run like parallel to each other, and everything started at the very beginning, like say the Big Bang or whatever, and
Yeah.
and all those universes were created at that instant?
It would make sense for it to be like that.
Gotcha. And then every event just plays out with every
Differently.
possibility.
Like there could be a universe where life never started at all.
Yeah. Okay. And then okay.
Yeah.
And then okay. So I've read that, like, apparently based on like the size of the observable universe and how many different galaxies there are and how many different, stars there are and whatever, it is literally like infinite.
Yeah.
And that is like beyond, I guess, human comprehension, like the actual concept of infinity. And I've heard someone say one time that like it is mathematically probable that there are infinitely many versions in this universe of us, and in everything that happens exactly the same way as it's happening now, existing other places in the universe, because it's so infinite. There are, like, me saying these words at this specific time right now, and you sitting right there. All of this there's like an exact, it's so infinite, like there's so, like, it's so innumerable that this situation is an exact copy of it happening somewhere else in the universe.
Yeah.
I can't process that.
I like to think of the universe as an ocean, and if you have everything concentrated in one spot of the ocean, eventually it kind of drifts away, and as it drifts away, it kind of breaks up into smaller pieces. So like that's kind of how our universe works, is that it's ever expanding, it's ever pushing away from itself. So the ideal situation is to find the center, which we wouldn't be able to do unless we were able to look at it from outside, which is impossible.
Have you been seeing those videos that Neil deGrasse Tyson has been posting about things that keep him up at night?
No, but I've seen. I mean, I don't watch them, but I see clips here and there of what he talks about.
You should specifically look up the things that he says keep him awake at night when he's laying in bed thinking about them. I can't remember what they are right off the top of my head at the moment, but it's pretty terrifying, and it kind of goes along with like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
We are already 44 minutes into this, and I'm not saying we should end here. I think we can pull another 15 minutes out easy and make it an hour, but I think we're definitely going to have to do a part 2.
Okay.
I think that'll be fun.
Yeah, I'd like to touch base on theories about aliens outside of what we think.
Yeah, me too. And I'd also like to present some evidence very briefly that kind of ties actual scientific observable evidence into my religious side of things, so that can all be kind of tied up,
Yeah.
I think it's too late and it's too long to get into it on this episode and today, but part 2 coming at you.
But aside from that, there's a lot of things that we don't know about.
Yeah.
And it really, like, sometimes when I think about it, I get a pain in my chest. It's like a high induced anxiety. of all the things that I don't know about, and it's too complicated to try to understand it.
Yeah.
That it just gives me anxiety.
I was talking to someone when I was working at Hot Topic, and like I was really stressed, and they were like, "Why are you stressed?" And I was like, "It's gonna sound stupid." And they were like, "Well, no, like, you know, what's up?" It was this guy named CJ. If you're listening, CJ, you're still the best, dude. And I was like, man, like I was like, it just sounds pretentious when I say it out loud. Like it really does. It sounds like I'm trying to like be smart or something. And I was like, it's just that I've been doing a lot of research, and it really does actually have me stressed out. He was like, "What is it?" And I was like, "We're all just like concerned with our own little lives, and like what's going on, going to our job, and like, I'm upset because I got to mow the yard and like all this stuff. But like in the grand scheme of things, like we're all on this like spaceship made out of like rocks and stuff, this giant spaceship called Earth, and we're hurling through infinity, um, at thousands of miles an hour or whatever, and we're rotating around or orbiting a giant fireball that, you know, is trying to kill us with radiation from nuclear fusion happening. And like the whole universe is like on this, like, this, what do you call it? Like where something's on a point where it can tilt either way. And the smallest change can upset the balance of everything. And like, it's all so, um, I can't think of the word, but you get what I'm trying to say is like the balance could be set off so easily, or like a solar flare could, lash out into the universe at any second and like either wipe out, all of our electronics and whatever, or like just instantly fry us. And like, we're all just pretending like that's not happening, or like we're too small and our perspective is so limited that like we can't even like think about daily how crazy that is. It's just like there's a giant fireball and it's like spitting off radiation, and we're traveling at thousands of miles an hour as the universe expands, and it's kind of stressful.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, it is. I think about that.
Yeah,
more than I should.
Yeah, the reason I say all that is because like I get it. Like I get when you like try to process these things, it does cause you some stress because it's just a lot to process, and we don't know much. Even though like we know a lot, we don't know much.
Yeah.
And yeah. Have you seen that they're finally like trying to plan missions to start mining asteroids and bringing resources back from space?
No.
Yeah, they're about to start doing that.
Well, that's a very smart idea.
And yeah,
I feel like if they can get enough metals out of doing that, then they could start working on a sort of shield or protective barrier that floats around in space that we can electronically move. Maybe it could block some solar flares or deflect certain things, and that kind of thing would be really cool. That's the kind of future I want to live in.
Yeah, I mean, possibilities are
we got to
endless,
think.
honestly.
We got to think about our longevity.
Yeah.
Rather than the current war or the polar ice caps melting and all that stuff. Like, there's so many things that we could do to prevent those things, and that starts in space.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, it sure would be nice if we could work together on something like that instead of murdering each other for nothing, though. But yeah, I'm with you. Like, I mean, I just wonder, like, what kind of material they're gonna bring back and be able to bring back. Like,
what I think would be cool?
What
is if they started doing that and discovered that there's more elements out there than we have on Earth.
Have you listened to like any Bob Lazar interviews?
I don't even know who that is.
Oh my gosh, you don't know who Bob Lazar is? Okay, I'm gonna send you some stuff after the podcast for you to look into when you have free time and you're don't have anything going on, you're just browsing on your phone. Balbazar is a guy who worked at this. I actually don't want to spoil it, even though it's real life. He worked at a secret base akin to Area 51, and they had all these departments that were compartmentalized so that the people couldn't communicate about what they were working on. But he talks about they had a stable version of this element that is normally unstable and it doesn't take very long to degrade because of its instability chemically. And apparently they were able to use this to essentially power this device that they were supposed to be reverse engineering, that was like an anti-gravity machine type thing. And it goes along with what you just said, like the other elements, and not only other elements, because we've created elements.
Now, where did they get the technology to?
Oh, they recovered it from a crash.
An alien spaceship?
Yeah, apparently.
That's what I'm talking about.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what they say anyway, or that's, I can't remember.
I was watching something a while, like is several years ago, but there was a scientist, the one who created fiber optics.
Yeah.
And he talks about how the idea came from a spaceship crash, and within the ship they had these wires of like clear luminescent wires that were sending data all over the ship.
I've heard about that too.
That's where he got his idea for fiber optic.
Yeah, it's so nuts. I wonder if that's true.
Or
if like maybe it was like,
why would he make that up? I don't understand why he would make that up. Why wouldn't? If
people are weird sometimes.
If you're a scientist and you want credit for something that you've created that has literally changed the world, fiber optics is the best way to send data these days, and it has been since it's been created. Why would he put that on the aliens?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't have an answer for that, but all I know is sometimes people are weird and they lie about stuff like that. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it's logical, but that does happen.
If anything, I would lie about finding aliens and getting that idea off of them.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If anything, I would lie about that, not about the fact that that's where that came from.
Right. Yeah.
Because I would want all the credit.
Right.
Because he literally changed the world.
Yeah.
With fiber optics.
Yeah, I don't know, but I did read about that, and it's pretty nuts. Do you think that
and you think about all the technology we've been gaining and pursuing over the last however long, and it's just doubling and doubling and doubling every year. Like, we have to have some sort of outside help.
Yeah, if you look at
started somewhere.
If you look at the last 100 years or 100 and
let's say
20 years.
Let's say 100.
100 years.
1920. That's around the time airplanes were invented and cars were invented.
Yeah, and then it was 50 years later they put a man on the moon. Like, that's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and not only that, computers were around then, and video cameras and yeah, all that stuff that we were able to take. Like when pictures were first invented, that was a long time ago. Like, that was mid 1800s, I believe, and it took us a whole 100 years to put out video. I think something like that.
Oh yeah, we'll go with it. I believe it.
It's not exactly, but it's somewhere between 50 and 100 years to start producing video out of pictures. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's how slow our technology process was that
for
long
thousands
ago.
And thousands and thousands of years.
And now all of a sudden it's hyper speed.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're coming out with new, crazy, cooler technology every single year.
Yeah,
And it's getting more advanced as we go. Like it's doubling in its advancement every single year.
I just wonder if that's because we had outside help, or if it's just because that technology development is exponential. You know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
took us like so long to get to this point, but then from that point, the next point, you know, it was a little bit quicker, and it just multiplies. It's multiplicative, and if it is exponential, then it seems like a regular increase, but it's just still crazy to think about.
So
But I do wonder.
here's a quick question that goes off of the anti-gravity thing.
Okay.
If they're able to have control of an anti-gravity unit, is it possible for us to travel through space at the speed of light with that kind of power? If it's able to take out the gravity that's pushed upon us while we're traveling at light speed, does that negate the effects of gravity?
I don't know, but I do know it has something to do with what they're calling negative energy. And I also,
Sounds like time travel to me.
yeah, and I mean, what is gravity?
Gravity is the pressure that is pushed upon us from, out the outside force. It's more like
But what's the
you're
outside
at the
force?
center. It's the pressure of space.
What it is it's the movement of an object across time and space. Like, because space is a fabric, and like anything with mass essentially pulls on that fabric. And that gives it's almost like gravity is an illusion as well. It's hard to explain, but
Gravity is the force that we feel.
yeah, exerted upon us by something with mass traveling across the fabric of time and space.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I don't know if that has anything to do with being able to go faster than the speed of light or not. I keep looking into that because that's a point of contention between us that we don't agree upon. I don't think you can go faster than the speed of light. You think it's possible. I don't think it's possible at all.
Well, I don't know. I feel like there's a certain point in time where we're going to be able to do that.
We will see.
I mean, we have an infinite amount of years to develop something like that.
Well, I don't. I'm half dead.
I'm talking about us as humans.
Oh, yeah.
Our sun isn't scheduled to die out for another
Scheduled?
3,000
No.
for another 3,000 years at least. We have plenty of time.
It's way longer than 3,000 years, but it will happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know how long it takes for a sun to live, but I've heard speculations that it's going to be around the year 5,000 before our sun turns green and explodes.
I'm going to look it up because I don't know either. When will sun die? I'm going to make sure to spell sun right. It says about 5 billion years.
That's how long it lives?
No, it says in about 5 billion years, the sun will run out of hydrogen, which, that's what the fusion is. It's fusing hydrogen. It says our star is currently in the most stable phase of its life cycle and has been since the formation of our solar system about 4.5 billion years ago. Once all the hydrogen gets used up, the sun will grow out of this stable phase. So it's going to be billions of years.
So however much our sun has been alive, it's got that much more to go.
It should be having a midlife crisis any time now.
All right. Well, we got plenty of time.
Yeah.
To develop, interstellar travel.
I wish I could be alive when that happens.
Yeah. Well, we only have to live 30 more years, and then they're going to expand. They're going to be able to expand our life.
I hope.
Like everyone should have the life expectancy of at least 150, I think.
Wow.
So that means like if you can put off any medical issues that you have for the next 30 years, then we'll be able to cure it.
Let's do it.
Can't wait.
Well,
I feel like I'm going to live another 30 years.
I hope I am.
If I can just make it 30 more years, that means I can make it another 100.
Well, do you want to wrap this episode up and we'll continue with part 2 next week?
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you guys for listening. Episode 20 has been fun. I know I went on like a 30-minute monologue, but I hope it was informative. Please go check out the thing by Chuck Misler. It's on YouTube if you got a few hours to spare. And I hope it makes sense. And if you have any questions about aliens, pedals, or otherwise, email us at tapedals@gmail.com, or you can get a hold of us on Instagram or Twitter, I guess. I've never used Twitter, but we have it. So, yeah.
Also, any alien conspiracy theories that you have or want us to explore, please also message us and let us know so that we can touch base on that next week.
Bye.
Bye.